Good morning, guys, and welcome to Mobile Device Manager Plus training program. So let me introduce myself first. I am Tanuj, a product specialist at ManageEngine, and I will be your trainer for today's session. This is a 3-week training session which is aimed at facilitating better understanding of Mobile Device Manager Plus. And currently, we are in the third week of the training program where we'll be taking a look at the modern management capabilities of Mobile Device Manager Plus for both Windows 10 devices as well as for Mac machines. In case you're interested in just legacy device management, I recommend you to go for Desktop Central, which is our integrated desktop and mobile device management solution. Also, if you missed out our previous training sessions and want to know more about our training programs, you can check out the link that is given below. Without any further ado, let us jump straight into the training agenda. So this is the training agenda for today's session. We'll begin with an overview of Mobile Device Manager Plus for those who are unfamiliar as to how the product works and manages devices. Here, we'll start off with a general introduction about the product, followed by its high-level architecture. Then, we'll take a look at the ports that are required for device management. And lastly, a high-level understanding as to how MDM manages devices. This presentation incorporates a problem-solution approach whereby I've taken a few commonly faced scenarios that I've recently encountered in support. The first one is onboarding Windows 10 laptops and Macs for management. Regardless of how mobility has shaped today's workforce, there is always a need for laptops and desktops. So for this purpose, we'll be taking a look at the automated enrollment methods that Mobile Device Manager Plus supports for Windows devices, that is Windows Autopilot enrollment. And similarly, the automated enrollment for Macs, that is Apple Business Manager. Moving on to our second scenario, which is deploying corporate configurations. So why do you think we need to deploy corporate configurations? Well, this is to ensure that the devices are usage ready right after activation. You don't want your end users to keep configuring device settings, do you? For that purpose, let us take a look at the policies that Mobile Device Manager supports. So we learn how to configure basic device settings such as Wi-Fi, VPN, or let's say email accounts and much more. Since these devices access a ton of corporate data, it is highly recommended that you configure additional security settings to beef up security as well. Now, moving on to a third scenario, which is managing apps and content. Here we learn how to silently install both the store apps as well as custom enterprise apps to all your managed devices without any user intervention. And in the second part of this scenario, we dive deep into content management. Here, we'll take a look at how we can securely distribute corporate documents and media files to all your devices. We'll end this session with a couple of smaller scenarios along with a solution. Let's get started with the overview now. So Mobile Device Manager Plus can be used to manage mobile devices and tablets running on iOS, Android, and Windows operating systems. In addition to that, MDM can manage laptops running on Mac OS, Windows 10, as well as Chrome OS. MDM can also manage Apple TVs and Microsoft Surface Hubs. As previously stated, Mobile Device Manager Plus is available as an add-on to ManageEngine Desktop Central, which is our unified endpoint management solution. This is currently available as an on-premises offering. In case you're interested in just modern device management, you can go with the standalone product, that is Mobile Device Manager Plus, which is available both on premises as well as on cloud. For all the MSP folks out there, we have a dedicated Mobile Device Manager Plus MSP. This is also available on premises as well as on cloud. MDM integrates with a ton of enterprise-specific applications that you might be using on a very regular basis. With regards to help desk solutions, MDM integrates with its in-house help desk solution, that is ManageEngine Service Desk Plus. We also integrate with Spiceworks, Jira Service Desk, Zendesk Support, as well as ServiceNow. MDM also integrates with a couple of business process automation apps such as Zoho CRM and Zoho Creator. In case you want to integrate other applications with MDM and want to access our publicly available APIs, you can do so by clicking the link that is given below. Visiting the link given below. This now brings us to the Mobile Device Manager Plus architecture. This will add understanding as to how MDM manages devices. There are three major components that are present in this architecture: the MDM server, the notification services, and the managed devices. The MDM server does not directly contact the managed devices. In turn, it leverages the notification services which wake up your managed devices. Then these devices contact the MDM server for tasks and other information. As you would have already noticed, the platform specific notification services, yes. So Apple Push Notification Service, APNS for Apple, Firebase Cloud Messaging, FCM for Android, and Windows Notification Service, WNS for Windows. Since all your devices are mobile, it is highly recommended that you NAT your internal IP address of your MDM server to an external IP address. But for those worried about exposing your IP address to a publicly available network such as the internet, we have a solution just for you, so you need not worry. You can optionally configure this element called the secure gateway. So what secure gateway does is it acts as an intermediary between your managed devices and the MDM server, routing all inbound communication from the devices to the server through it, essentially acting as an additional layer of security for your MDM server. You can also integrate your Active Directory with MDM for authentication purposes. This is optional as well. The Mobile Device Manager Plus architecture is specific to the on-premise offering. In case you're using cloud, you need not worry about any of these. We just saw that there was a ton of communication happening with respect to the architecture. So for these communication to happen effectively, there are certain ports that are used. Ports basically facilitate these communication. The communication between the device and the Mobile Device Manager Plus server happens on a secure HTTP channel using the port 9383. And the Mobile Device Manager Plus server to notification services uses the port 443. And similarly, the devices to notification service use the following ports that are listed here. In case you're using MDM Cloud, the only port that you need to open on your organization's firewall is 443 for the server and notification services. For more information on ports and domains, you can check out this link that is given below. This now brings us to the question, how does MDM actually manage devices? Well, this is again platform specific. For Apple, Windows, and Chrome devices, MDM leverages a native client that is already present in these devices, essentially providing an agentless management. But for Android devices, it's not the case. You must install the ME MDM app in order to manage Android devices. So this brings us to the end of our overview. Now let's get started with our first scenario, that is onboarding Windows 10 laptops. Mobility has indeed restructured the entire way corporate organizations have been functioning. Employees tend to bring in multiple devices into your corporate network for both personal as well as work-related activities. But do you think this mobility will take the edge off traditional laptops and desktops? Well, to be honest, I don't think so. No matter what, there will always be a need for such laptops and desktops. In fact, this very same presentation is being done using a Windows machine, and I'm pretty sure most of you are using a Windows or let's say a Mac machine to view this presentation. So doesn't this boil down to the point that such devices existing in your enterprise must be bought under management as well? Yes, exactly. So we'll take a look at the automated enrollment methods that Mobile Device Manager Plus supports for Windows 10 laptops. This now brings us to Windows Autopilot enrollment. As you can see from the name, this is a fully automated enrollment method, which ensures that the devices are usage ready right after activation. So this is similar to Apple's Apple Business Manager enrollment, whereby you can choose to skip the initial setup steps during device activation, besides just automating the enrollment process. Now let me take you through the autopilot enrollment workflow. So there are 4 steps here. First, you need to integrate your MDM server with your Azure AD. This is because MDM leverages Azure for device management. Then you'll need to add the devices to the Business Store portal. Since the portals are now integrated, adding devices to the Business Store portal essentially means you're adding devices to MDM itself. After this, you'll need to distribute and activate the devices, post which the devices get registered with MDM. The first 2 steps are admin performed and are one time. Now, before I take you to the MDM server and tell you how to enroll devices using autopilot enrollment, there are certain prerequisites that you must adhere to. Let us take a look at the prerequisites. So firstly, you'll need to ensure a third-party certificate is added to MDM. Then you'll need to ensure that you have an Azure administrator account. And lastly, you must purchase adequate Azure user licenses because these licenses must be assigned to the AD user groups whose users are going to be given these devices. That is, the devices enrolled using Azure Autopilot. Now, let me take you to the MDM server quickly. So this is the MDM server, and I'm currently under the enrollment tab and inside the Azure enrollment section from the left pane. So once that we have done purchasing adequate licenses, the next step is to configure an app template in Microsoft Azure with the details that you can see on screen. So what we have here is the MDM terms of use URL, the MDM discovery URL, and the app ID URI. So basically these need to be copied from your MDM server and pasted on the Microsoft Azure portal. Now I'll take you to the Microsoft Azure portal and show you how you can configure this. So this is the Microsoft Azure portal. And let me select Azure Active Directory from the leftmost pane and navigate further into mobility and MDM and MAM. And here you'll see an option to add an application. Once you click on add application, this is where you need to add and authorize the ME MDM app that is going to manage your devices. This is exactly where the steps slightly differ for both the on-premises and MDM cloud. So let me take you through both the steps in detail. Let's begin with integrating MDM on-premises. So here you'll need to find the on-premises MDM application and select it. Once you do that, click on add in the right bottom part of your screen. Now go back to the Azure portal and repeat the navigation steps, that is Azure Active Directory from the leftmost pane, mobility MDM and MAM, and here you'll find the on-premises MDM application that you just added. So let me click on it, and this is the screen that pops up. Firstly, you'll need to define an MDM user scope right here. So once you do that, I'll tell you the reason why you need to define a user scope. This is to ensure that you have control over the users who can enroll their devices using Azure Autopilot. You can ensure that none of your users, or some of your users, or all of your users can enroll using Azure Autopilot. Once you do that, you'll need to provide the MDM terms of use URL and the MDM discovery URL right here. I just showed you these on the MDM server, right? So those needs to be copied and pasted right here. For the app ID URI, let me click on this on-premises MDM application settings, and I'll need to find an option called expose an API. I do that config, I can save the configuration. So now that the requisite details have been provided, the process is almost similar, just that you need to find a different item, that is MDM app. Once you select it, click on add. Now repeat the navigation part, Azure Active Directory, further into mobility, MDM and MAM, and here you'll find the manage. So let me open it for you. And similar to the last step, you need to define an MDM user scope. So discovery URL. You must kindly URI is not required in case you're configuring MDM cloud. So let me save the configuration for you. This now brings us to the end of automating the enrollment process. But in steps and skip them during device setup, you'll need to configure that on the Windows Business Store. So now let me take you to the Windows Business Store, that is the Autopilot portal. Once I provide my credentials and sign in, I'll need to find Manage on the top band and select Devices from the left pane. Now there are 3 steps that are recommended here. The first step is to create a new Autopilot deployment profile. So for that purpose, let me select Autopilot deployment and click on Create New Profile from the drop-down. It'll prompt me to provide a name for the profile. Once I do that, this is where I need to specify the steps that I want to skip during device activation. So steps such as Cortana, OneDrive, or OEM registration setup pages can be skipped. The privacy settings can also be skipped on the devices. Now, let's say you're handing over devices to contract employees and you don't want them to create local admin accounts on the device, right? In that case, you can choose to disable that as well. The end user license agreement can also be skipped. Once you configure these according to your requirement, go ahead and click on create. So the profile has been created. The next step now is to add devices. For this purpose, you would have received a CSV file containing the list of devices along with their details from the authorized reseller from whom you had purchased them. So that CSV file needs to be uploaded back to the Windows Business Store. Once you do that, you'll need to provide a group where you want all the devices to get added. Now click on add. You can see now that the request is being processed. So let me refresh the list once. And there we are. The Surface Pro device has been added here. For demonstration purpose, in my CSV file, I had just included details of a single Surface Pro device. And in case you're wondering whether you'll be able to add multiple devices at once, yes, you can add details of multiple devices in a single CSV file. So now that the devices have been added, the next step is to associate, that is, apply the ManageEngine MDM profile that we created earlier to the device we just added. So let me select the device and click on Autopilot Deployment right here. And now I'll be selecting Apply ManageEngine MDM profile. Now you can clearly see that the ManageEngine MDM profile has been applied to this particular device. This now brings us to the end of the enrollment process. But in order to complete the onboarding process, there is one more step that you need to do, which is nothing but user assignment. I'll now take you to the MDM server and explain about how you can assign users to devices. But before that, there is a reason why onboarding has been split into enrollment and user assignment. Let's discuss about it in the MDM server itself. So this is the MDM server I was talking about. And you can now see that the Surface Pro 4 device has been added to MDM as well. Now, the reason why onboarding has been split into two is because you can enroll devices as and when they are available in your inventory, and you can assign new users whenever new users join into your organization. So in order to streamline this process for you, we have split that into two. Now let us come back to user assignment. Now there are actually two ways by which you can assign users. Let's say you just have few devices to which you want to assign users. In that case, we just have a single device here. So let me select the Assign User button under the Actions tab. Here, you can specify your user type, whether it's a local user or a domain user, and provide details accordingly, such as user's name, the email address, and the device name if need be. Once you click on Assign here, MDM will ensure that the particular device gets assigned to the particular user's detail that you provide here. Now, what if there were 100 devices in my CSV file? And in case you're wondering whether you'll need to manually user assign each and every device, well, that's not the case at all. We have this option called bulk user assignment. So let me click on this Assign Users button that you can see here. Once I do that, MDM will generate a CSV file containing the list of all unassigned devices. So you need to download the CSV file, add details such as username, email address, and group name, and upload the modified CSV file back to MDM. That is right here. Once you do that, MDM will ensure each and every device present in that CSV file gets assigned to the user that you have provided in the same. This now brings us to the end of Windows Autopilot enrollment. Now let us move on to the other commonly used machines in enterprises, which are Macs. So for enrolling Macs, we'll be using the Apple Business Manager. If you recall correctly, Apple Business Manager was explained in great detail in our first session of this training program. Let me not take you through the entire step once again. In case you missed it, do register your interest towards a personalized demo on chat right now. We'll be happy to assist you. However, let me take you through the workflow once. So this is the Mac enrollment workflow. This is very similar to the Autopilot enrollment, and you'll need to integrate the portals using your Apple ID. Once you do that, you'll need to add devices to the portal and then distribute and activate the devices, post which the devices get registered with MDM. These two steps are also admin performed and one time. As I already told you, this is very similar to the Autopilot enrollment. You can also automate the enrollment process here, choose to skip the initial setup steps during device activation, and you also get another option of that is automation of local admin account creation. Now I'll take you to the MDM server and explain about these in greater detail. Here we are back to the MDM server. Let me select Apple enrollment from the left pane. While setting up your Apple Business Manager or your Apple School Manager, this is the exact step where you're supposed to specify the steps, that is the device setup steps, you want to skip during device activation. So since we're talking about Macs, let me select Mac from here. These are the steps: File Vault, iCloud Diagnostics, iCloud Storage, and Apple Registration that you can choose to skip. You can choose to skip specific steps or all of them at once as well. Now let us move on to automation of local admin account creation. Let me check this option for you. You need to provide requisite details such as display name, username, and password right here. In case you want to create local admin accounts and hide it from the user, you can choose to do so as well. Now let's say you're giving away devices to contract employees and you don't want them to create additional accounts during activation. You can choose to disable that as well. In case you choose to allow them to create such accounts, you get another option. You can choose whether you want that account to be an administrator account or a standard account. Once you configure these according to your requirement, you can click on Create. This now brings us to the end of our first scenario. Now let us move on to our second scenario, which is deploying basic configurations. In the previous scenario, we had seen the various onboarding methods, and we had also learned how to skip initial setup steps during device activation. Well, the entire purpose of this was to ensure that the devices are usage ready right after activation. However, there are certain steps such as setting up Wi-Fi, VPN, or let's say adding email accounts that the users must do in order to start using the devices. You must now be wondering whether MDM provides you with a way with which you can also configure these settings remotely on the devices. Well, you're right. MDM does provide you with an extensive list of configurations that you can configure across all supported platforms. Now let us take a look at the policies that are supported for Windows 10 laptops. Here we'll first take a look at the basic settings and learn how to configure them, such as Wi-Fi, VPN, or adding email accounts and much more. Next, we'll learn how to lock down devices to run a specific app or a specific set of apps using kiosk mode. And lastly, we'll take a look at the restrictions that are available for security hardening. Now let me take you to the MDM server again. This time we'll be creating a Windows profile. Since we're talking about Windows devices here, I'll go into Device Management tab and select Profiles from the left pane. Once I have selected Profiles here, I'll need to click on Create Profile and select Windows from the drop-down. Let us provide a meaningful name here. Let's say Windows Profile New and click on Create. So these are the policies that you can configure remotely for all your Windows 10 devices. Let me start with passcode, which is the first layer of security. With the parameters that are provided here, you can define your own complexity for the passcode policy. You can choose whether you want your passcode to be an alphanumeric value or just numbers. You can also set a maximum length that the users are supposed to provide in their passcodes. In case you want your users to change passwords frequently, let's say 30 days, you can configure the maximum passcode age right here. Let's say I provide this as 30. So MDM will ensure that the passcode expires in every 30 days and it will prompt the user to create a new passcode again. And in this case, if you don't want the user to use the same password again and again, you can configure this option called the number of passcodes to be maintained in history. Let's say I provide this as 3. MDM will ensure that users cannot use 3 of their recently used passwords as a new password again. And there is another option, maximum number of failed attempts. This will ensure that the devices are wiped to factory settings in case the user exceeds the limit that you defined here. Let me save the profile. You can now see that the profile has been saved. Let's move on to Wi-Fi. In order to configure a Wi-Fi remotely, you'll need to provide the Wi-Fi SSID. Let's say I'm configuring Wi-Fi for this organization named Zilker. Now I can choose whether I want to connect to this Wi-Fi automatically, that is when the devices are in proximity. And the security type again depends on your requirement. For demonstration purpose, let me select a WPA2 PSK type. The only requisite detail here is a password. Once I provide a password, I'll be good to go. You can also configure proxy settings if need be. Now let's move on to VPN. In case you have remote employees and you want them to access corporate data, you can configure a VPN in your organization. So these are the VPN types that MDM currently provides support to. In case you want other VPNs, you can register your interest by clicking this link right here. Now, for demonstration purpose, let me select L2TP and show you how to configure that. The only requisite detail here is your server name or IP address. Once I provide that, I can go ahead and configure the VPN. MDM also supports the per app VPN. In case you want to configure VPN for specific apps, you can configure per app VPN here. This is the place where you're supposed to specify your app name or bundle identifiers. Now, let me show you an example. Let's say I select Excel from the drop-down here. So this will ensure that whenever user uses Excel on his device, it will happen through the VPN configured right here. Now let us move on to email. I'll come back to kiosk in a bit. You might now be wondering how MDM deals with such user-specific policies like email, Exchange Active Sync, and certificates. Well, this is possible with the help of dynamic variables. I'll show you how to use a dynamic variable in a bit, but these dynamic variables automatically fetch the appropriate details that are mapped to the particular device right from the enrollment details itself. Now, in case you want to configure an email, you'll need to provide your account type and username and settings such as your incoming mail server settings and outgoing mail server settings, and you'll be good to go. Now let us move on to Exchange Active Sync. MDM supports both the Exchange Online and Exchange on-premises. Once you provide your requisite detail remotely for your devices. Now let me show you an example of dynamic variables. Let's say username is a requisite detail here. Instead of providing this as the actual user's name, I provide this as %username%. Ensure that the appropriate username fetched that is mapped to this particular device will be automatically fetched from the enrollment details. And also these are the other dynamic variables that MDM supports. Now let us move on to certificates. Distributing a CA certificate is a piece of cake. You just need to upload the certificate here and distribute this profile to the devices to which you want to add a certificate. But what about user-specific client certificates? Well, with SCEP, you can distribute user-specific client certificates to all your devices in a very scalable manner, no matter how large your organization is. Now let us take a look at the restrictions that are available for security hardening. Under device functionality, let's say you don't want your users to use external storage devices such as an SD card, you can choose to disable it right here. Also, in case your organization prevents the usage of a camera, you can choose to restrict that as well. You also have an option to restrict screen capture. Now let me click on applications here. Take a look at the first option, install non-store apps. It is always recommended that you deny your users from installing non-store apps. This is because non-store apps are a major source through which malware spreads into your organization. So let us deny the same. And besides just security hardening restrictions, there are a whole lot of other restrictions with which you can improve productivity as well. Now let me save this configuration for you and publish this profile. After publishing this profile, I'll show you how you can associate a profile to groups and devices. So let me publish the same, and you can now see that the profile has been successfully published. First, with this profile, I'll show you how you can associate it to a particular device. Let me take you to the Groups and Devices tab, and here I'll be selecting the Devices tab. So let me narrow down the search by selecting Platform as Windows. So this will provide me a list of all the Windows devices that I have enrolled here. Let me select this device, and you have an option called Associate Profile. So let me click on it. It will show me all the profiles that can be associated to this particular device. You can now see the Windows profile new that we just created. Let me select it, and you can now see that the profile will be associated to this device. But from the remarks, you can now see that the profile is yet to be applied. This is because the device is currently offline. As in when the particular device is online, the profile will be associated to it. It is always recommended that you test your profiles, that is, you associate your profiles to a test device before associating it to your production environment. Now, before I show you how to associate profiles to a group, I'll take you back to the Profiles tab and we'll create a new Windows kiosk profile. So let me click on Profiles here and create another Windows profile, and this time it will be for kiosk. Let me name it as kiosk for Windows and click on Continue. Let me select kiosk from the left pane. You can now see that MDM supports both the single app as well as multi-app kiosk. With kiosk mode, you can ensure that you lock down devices to run specific apps or a specific set of apps. For demonstration purpose, let me configure a multi-app kiosk type. So this is where you'll need to specify all your application names or bundle identifiers. Let me select alarms and clocks, calculator, and camera. So this will ensure that whenever the user uses the device, he won't be able to access any other device setting or let's say any other application besides the ones that have been whitelisted here. In case any of these applications are not present on the device, you can choose to automatically install the apps via MDM as well. Now let me save the configuration and publish the same. You can now see that the profile has been successfully published. Let me select a group this time. Let me take you back to the Groups and Devices tab, and let's say we're selecting the sales team group. Here you have the Profiles tab and an Associate Profile option right here. Let's click on it. This will show me all the profiles across various operating systems because we're dealing with a group right here. So these can be associated to this group. Let me select the platform type as Windows. And here we have the kiosk for Windows profile that we just created. Let me select it. The profile execution has been successfully happened. So this will ensure that, actually MDM will ensure that this profile gets associated to all the devices that are present in this group and also to the devices that might be added to this group as well. Now I have already enrolled a Surface Pro device and associated a kiosk profile to it. I'll show you what happens on the device end. So this is the device I was talking about. As you can see, there are 5 applications that have been whitelisted here. The user cannot use any other device functionality or any other application besides these 5 apps. You can also ensure that users don't tamper with your device settings that you have already pre-configured on such devices. Now let us move on to Macs. For Macs, we'll similarly take a look at the basic settings such as Wi-Fi, VPN, and email. And then we'll take a look at the restrictions that are available for security hardening. And lastly, I'll show you 2 interesting policies with which you can proactively secure corporate data. Let me take you to the MDM server now. This time we'll be creating a profile, but for Apple. Let me select profiles from the left pane, and under create profile, let me select Apple. Let me provide the name again, Apple profile new, and click on continue. So these are the policies that are supported for Apple devices. These are the extensive list of policies that I was talking about, which you can configure remotely for all your iOS, macOS, and Apple TV devices. Wi-Fi, VPN, and email are just a few options among those. This was also explained in detail in the previous session of this training program. So let me not take you through it once again. In case you missed it, do let us know on chat. We'd be happy to schedule a personalized demo according to your convenient date and time. Now let us skip on to the next part, that is the restrictions for Macs that are meant for security hardening. Under device functionality, in case your organization restricts the usage of a camera, you can choose to restrict camera as well. Now let's say you don't want your users to share corporate data through screenshots or screen recording. You can choose to restrict that right here. Under security, you can have a control over the users. That is, you can prevent the users from unlocking devices using less secure biometric methods such as Touch ID or Face ID. In case you don't want your users to share documents to other machines and devices, you can restrict iTunes file sharing right here. And similarly, in case you have given a device to a contract employee and you don't want him to autofill passwords, that is, you don't want passwords to autofill in Safari and other apps, you can choose to restrict that. You also have another option where you can restrict employees from sharing or requesting passwords with devices and from devices in proximity. Another interesting feature here is the gatekeeper. So what this gatekeeper does is it ensures that the users can download apps just from specific sources. Let us take a look at the options that are available here. Now let's say I select App Store. Gatekeeper will ensure that users can only download apps from the authorized Apple App Store. You also have another setting right here, that is, you can allow or restrict users from overriding the gatekeeper settings that you have just configured here. There are certain restrictions meant for iCloud and certain ones for Classroom as well. Now let me put up an interesting question in front of you. What would you do if someone breaks into your Mac machine and gets hold of all the corporate data that is present in it? That would be awful, right? Well, what if I told you there is a solution to this problem? Yes, even if the corporate data ends up into the hands of the intruder, you can still ensure that it will be of no use to the intruder. This is possible by configuring a file vault encryption policy using MDM. Now I'll take you to the MDM server and explain about file vault encryption in detail. Here we are back to the MDM server. Since we are already there inside an Apple profile, let me select file vault from the left pane. So here is file vault encryption. There we are. The only requisite here is that you cannot combine file vault with any other policies within a single profile. You will just need to create a new profile in case you want to configure file vault. So what is file vault? File vault encryption scrambles all the data that is present in your Mac machines and renders it unreadable to unauthorized users. You can encrypt your Mac machines either by using a personal recovery key, an institutional recovery key, or a combination of both, which we highly recommend. For the personal recovery key, you can choose whether or not to display the recovery key to the user. And with an institutional recovery key, you can ensure that file vault is configured for all Mac machines in your enterprise using a single institutional recovery certificate. So you'll need to upload the certificate here. And for the steps to creating a new institutional recovery certificate, you can click on this link right here. The entire file vault process happens in the backend. So you will not be disturbed. That is, your users will not be disturbed, or it won't affect your productivity in any way. Usually what happens is whenever the user forgets his passcode to a Mac machine, that is where the personal recovery key and the institutional recovery key come into play. You might now ask me, what are the benefits of configuring file vault using MDM rather than doing it manually on my employee's Mac machine? Well, in case you choose to do it manually, you will need to ensure that the employees remember the personal recovery key. So each and every employee must manually remember the personal recovery key. Whereas with MDM, it takes care of it for you. And you also won't be able to configure the institutional recovery key because this is something that is specific to MDM applications. This method is actually beneficial when intruder gets hold of all the corporate data on a Mac machine. But if you ask me whether MDM provides a way with which you can prevent intruders from breaking into a Mac machine, I would say yes. So this is possible with a firmware password. Let me show you how to configure a firmware password and explain about it. So here we have the firmware password policy. Now, a firmware password ensures that unauthorized users cannot boot up Mac machines either by using external storage devices or any other internal storage devices besides the default startup disk. So usually what happens is employees tend to lose or misplace devices, and unauthorized users access these devices and boot it up using such methods and start using the devices right away. This is something which you don't want to happen. In case you have a firmware password configured, whenever such an unauthorized boot up happens, the Mac machine will request the user for a firmware password. So configuring it is very simple as well. You will just need to enter the password and confirm the same. Now I have already enrolled a Mac machine and associated a profile containing file vault encryption and firmware password. Now I'll show you how to check whether a profile has been associated to a device or not. Let me take you to the inventory tab for that. And now here will be the devices. So I'll narrow down the search by selecting the platform type as Apple. You can see that the Mac device is right here. So let me open it and click on security settings. So this is where you'll find the file vault encryption details and the firmware password details. In case you want to view the recovery keys, you can do so by clicking the links right here. And similarly, for the firmware password, you can click here to view the key. This now brings us to the end of our second scenario. Now let us move on to our third scenario, which is managing apps and content. In the previous scenario, we had seen the various ways by which you can lock down devices to run specific apps and to secure corporate data that is present in them. And in this scenario, we'd take a look at how to deploy apps and securely distribute corporate data such as documents and media files to all your employees' managed devices. Let us begin with managing apps. So for Apple apps, we'll be using the Apple Business Manager. This was also explained in the previous session, so let me not take you through the process once again. However, let me take you through the workflow, just like how we did for the previous scenario. So this is the Silent App installation workflow. The first step is to integrate the portal, that is your ABM portal, with your MDM server. You'll be using the server token in this case. So this server token acts as a bridge between both your portals. After this, you'll need to approve or purchase apps on the portal on behalf of your organization. Then you'll need to distribute apps to the devices, post which these apps get installed silently on all your devices. These steps are again admin performed and are a one-time process. Now let me take you to the MDM server and show you how to silently install an application on a Mac machine without any user intervention. So here we are back to the MDM server, and we have this option called the app repository under the device management tab. So this app repository section contains all the applications across all supported platforms that you can deploy to your managed devices. Now, since we're talking about Mac applications, let me select the app type as Apple App Store. So here you can identify the applications that are meant for Macs. Now let me take you to the Groups and Devices tab, select a group, and show you how to silently install such an app in that particular group. Here we go to the Groups and Devices tab, and we'll select the same old sales team group. And here you will have the app section. Let me click on it and click on the Distribute Apps button. So this will give me a list of all the applications that can be associated to this group, similar to the profiles concept that we just saw. Let me select platform as Apple, and here is the application that is meant for a Mac machine. But before I select that, a major thing that I need to ensure is whether the silent installation option is checked. Only then the app will be silently installed on your managed Mac device. Else, the user must open the MDM app and manually install the application. You can also choose to notify users by email when an app is distributed to his device. Let me select it. You can now see that the application has been successfully installed. So this will ensure that the particular application gets installed in all the devices that are present in this group and to all the devices that are going to be added to this group as well. With the icon that you can see here, you can very well confirm that this is an application that is meant for Macs. Now let us take a look at managing modern Windows apps. So for managing modern Windows apps, I'd be taking you through the procedure on MDM. MDM supports both the management of modern Windows Store apps as well as modern Windows Enterprise apps. Let us begin by managing Windows Store apps, that is the silent installation of Store apps. For this purpose, we'll be integrating the Windows Business Store with Mobile Device Manager Plus. This is to ensure that all the apps that you purchase on the Windows Business Store gets added to MDM as well. MDM server and explain the process. But before that, we just have a single prerequisite. That is, you must ensure you have an Azure administrator account. This is because MDM extensively leverages Azure for device management. Having this prerequisite out of the way, here we are in the MDM server. I am currently under the device management tab, and inside app repository from the left pane, I have selected Windows apps and business store integration under it. Let me integrate the Windows Business Store right here by clicking on Login Now. I'll be taken to the Windows Business Store where I'll need to provide my credentials and sign in. Once this is done, it will prompt me for certain permissions that I'm supposed to accept. This is to ensure that the apps you purchase on the store gets added to MDM instantly. So let me accept it. Now I'll need to go back to the MDM server and activate the MeMDM app. This is to let the business store know that the MDM app is going to silently install other applications on managed devices. Let me click on next here, and you can now see that the app has been verified successfully. In case you already have certain apps that you have purchased on your, those get started to sync right away. You can now see that the sync is in progress, and now it is done. So all the apps have been synced to MDM. Now let me show you how you can purchase app from store link right here. This will take me to the Windows Business Store. I'm supposed to select shop for my group and search for the app that I want to install. For demonstration purpose, let me search for this application called Zoho Vault. Once I do that, it will fetch me the Zoho Vault application, and let me open it for you. Once I click on Get the app, we can see this message. This is a success message which says that Zoho Vault has been purchased and added to your inventory. By inventory, these people are referring to MDM's app repository. MDM actually syncs once every 24 hours with your Windows Business Store so that all the applications will be synced. In case you don't want to wait for this automatic sync to happen, you can choose to manually sync it as well. Now let me show you how you can manually sync store apps. Under the app repository, you have this option called Sync Apps. So once you click on Sync Apps, you can select the platform type, and this will ensure that all the apps get synced, including the ones that you have purchased in the recent 24-hour window. Now let us move on to the silent installation of Windows Enterprise apps. Not all requirements in an enterprise are met with already existing apps in the App Store. At some times, there might be a need for a custom in-house app to cater to specific needs. I'll take you to the MDM server and show you how you can add a Windows Enterprise app and silently install it on your managed device. So here we are back to the MDM server. Let me select Windows Business Store. And here under Enterprise App Configuration, you can already see that the code signing certificate has been added. So this is the only prerequisite. You must upload a code signing certificate in order to silently install Windows Enterprise apps. Now let me show you how to add an app. Under the app section, click on Add Apps button that you can see here and select Windows Enterprise app from the drop-down. So this is where I'm supposed to provide my Apex bundle. I already have an Apex bundle ready with me, so let me drag and drop it right here. You can now see that the file is being uploaded. MDM will basically unpack this file so that all the basic details such as the name and versions will be visible to you. This is to ensure that whenever an app is silently installed on a device will contact the MDM server for binaries that are required for installation. As you can see, all the details have been prefetched. You can add a display icon if need be. Let me provide the bundle identifier as Zilker test app. There is an option to provide a description as well, which is optional. There is an interesting feature here, that is the dependent files. For Windows Enterprise apps, there are always certain dependency files that must be pushed along with your enterprise app in case of successful installation, just for successful installation. So I already have the dependency files that I have received from my app developer. I have already zipped that, and let me drag and drop it here. You can now see that the dependency file is being uploaded. Well, MDM intelligently identifies whether all the required files have been uploaded or whether there are some dependency files which are missing. In this case, it has warned me with a message. I'll need to go back to my app developer and get the missing dependency files and upload the same one right here. As you can see, I have a final dependency folder right here. Let me drag and drop it. And once this is done, the app will be added to the app repository from where you can silently install them on your Windows devices by using the silent installation option. Now let us move on to the next part, which is content management. Let's say you have to securely distribute certain documents to your users. You add them as attachments and email them to your users. But there are a lot of third-party services that are being used here, like the email service, the email client, and also the third-party application viewers or document viewers the user might use to access these documents. In this case, there are a lot of chances that users can download documents, save them locally, or save them on third-party cloud services. Well, to prevent all of this, MDM has made available a secure way to distribute your corporate documents. Let me take you to the MDM server and show you how you can securely add, modify, and delete documents from your managed devices. So here we are in the MDM server. Let me click on content management from the left pane. This is present under device management. So this is the content repository, which is very similar to the app repository. So you'll need to add all the documents which you wish to distribute to your users right here. Let me show you how to add one. I clicked on add right here, and since I already have a general complaints PDF file with me, I'll need to drag and drop it here. You can also find the supported file formats here, and the maximum file size can be up to 1 GB for every file you upload. Once the upload is done, you can add descriptions if need be and also add tags. For now, let me add a tag saying general. I'll explain about these in quite some time. Let me click on done. And the file has been added to your content repository. Now, before I show you how you can distribute it to a device, I'll show you the MDM app that is present in my own Windows device. So this is the MDM application. We'll also take a look at how you can share the document to my device. This is the content catalog, and all the documents that have been distributed to my device earlier have been listed here. In case you want to download them, you can do so by clicking on this download link. All the downloaded documents will be listed here, and the recent documents section will show you all the recent documents. And we have this category section. So remember, I was talking to you about tags. In case you add tags to your documents, those will get categorized here accordingly. The MDM app serves as an in-app document reader. So this ensures that users cannot use third-party unauthorized apps to view your documents or save them locally or on third-party cloud services. Now let me show you how to share a document. Let's select the general complaints document we just uploaded and click on share. Let me go to the devices tab and search for this particular device, which is this one. So once I select it, let me select it again. So once I select this will ensure that this particular app gets installed in my content catalog, from where I can view the application by clicking on it. That is, post the download. Now let's say I want to modify an application, since corporate documents go through changes all around the year. Now let's say I want to modify the general complaints document. Let me click on this action button and click on modify. So this is where I need to upload the newer version of the file, and MDM will replace the older version with this. You can also change your description or add more tags if need be. Now in case you want to delete a document, you can select the document right here and click on delete. This will remove the document from the MDM app repository as well as from all the devices to which you have distributed it. This now brings us to the end of content management. Now let us take a look at the smaller scenarios and discuss their solutions. So the first scenario is we use Active Directory in our organization to manage users. Is it possible to remotely add the Macs enrolled in MDM to our organization's AD? Well, usually in order to add Macs to your AD, the administrator has to do it manually. But with MDM, you can configure this AD asset binding policy and automate this process. Now let me show you how to configure AD asset binding. Here we are back to the MDM server. Let me create a profile again so that I'll be able to show you AD asset binding. The profile is going to be an Apple profile. Let me click on continue here. You'll find AD asset binding in the left pane. So here it is. You'll need to provide requisite details such as the Active Directory domain, the organizational unit path, and you can also define your device access settings. In case you want your users to log into machines only within your corporate network, you can select the access type as network. And in case you want them to access their devices anywhere and anytime, you can select mobile as the access type. You can also specify AD user groups to which you want to grant admin privileges. Once you click on save, you're done. Now moving on to our second scenario, can we share contacts and calendars events to our employees' iOS devices? Well, this is possible with the help of contact sync and calendar sync policies that are available on MDM. Let me configure those for you. So here we have the contact sync. So this uses the CardDAV protocol. Basically, you need to provide your CardDAV account details here, and MDM will ensure that all the contacts that are present in your CardDAV account will be synced with the iOS device to which you distribute this policy. And calendar sync is very similar, but it uses your CalDAV protocol. Similarly, you need to provide your CalDAV account details here, and it will sync all the calendar events that are present in it on the iOS devices to which you distribute this particular profile. Moving on to our third scenario. How can we secure all the network communications in the managed devices? Well, this is possible by configuring an enterprise proxy. This is possible with the help of global HTTP proxy policy that MDM supports. Let me configure that for you. So here we have the global HTTP proxy policy. You can choose to manually configure this or automate the process. In case you already have a proxy auto configuration file available with you, you'll just need to provide your server URL and you're good to go. A major note here is that you must ensure that the particular device must be able to reach the MDM server through the configured global HTTP proxy. This is for continued device management. Let's move on to our fourth scenario. Does MDM on-premises offer options to prevent data loss due to server downtime? Well, all this while we were taking a look at the various options to secure your data or the devices that contain them. But here, to secure the MDM server itself, there are certain options that are available. That is two-factor authentication and passcode policy. Now let me show you how you can configure that. Under the admin tab, you have this option under user administration. So let me select secure authentication under user administration. Once you choose to enable two-factor authentication, you can choose whether you want it to be via the email or a Google Authenticator. Once you're done, you can also specify the days in which you want the browser to remember the OTP for. And moving on to the passcode policy, this is very similar to the password policy that we had seen for devices. You'll just need to define your own complexity using the parameters that you see here. Now let me move to the next scenario. I'm sorry about this. So can we decide the data that is fetched and displayed by users for management? Can the same be informed to the users as well? Well, in organizations embracing BYOD, it is the right for the user to know what data is being fetched and for the purpose, and the purpose behind it. This can be configured on MDM right away. Let me show you how you can configure that. So let me modify it for you. The IMEI and serial number are such details that MDM collects in order to manage devices. In case you don't want MDM to collect any other device data, you can configure it that way. But in case you want to, let's say, phone number, you can choose to collect and display just the phone number. You also have an option to display a custom message containing the reason for collecting this particular device data. Or let's say there are certain personal devices existing in your organization and you don't want your technicians to take remote control of them or completely wipe personal devices. You can choose to disable remote commands right here. Similarly, you can choose whether you want to display the policy to the users or not. In this case, I want it applicable across all my employees' personal devices. So let me select employee owned for you. Now on clicking save, I'll be done. Moving on to our next scenario, that is, how do I secure personally identified information while it is being downloaded or exported as reports? By now, you must be familiar about MDM's extensive reporting capabilities. So users usually don't want their personally identified information, such as phone number or email addresses, to be downloaded or exported as reports. In this case, you can configure it on MDM. Let me show you how to do it. So under MDM, you have this export settings. You will find export settings under security settings. I have already configured it in a way where all the personally identified information will be masked or obfuscated. Let me show you the other options that are available. You can choose to mask such data, hide them, or leave it undisturbed. You can also leave it to the technician's choice. This is also applicable for scheduled reports. This now brings us to the end of this training session. In case you found it informative, please rate us on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 is the best, on the survey questionnaire form that pops up once you close this session. You can also spread a word about our training programs on social media. Thank you for your wonderful time and have a great day ahead.